Hey, what's going on, Soulmates? Soulkeeper Comics Media and Memorabilia here, and I want to hit you guys up with some thoughts about the new Mister Sinister X-Men the Animated Series Marvel Legend figure that has just been revealed. This is a pretty decent Mister Sinister figure, but unfortunately it has quite a few inaccuracies to Mister Sinister from X-Men the Animated Series that this figure is supposed to be based off of. It's also got the cell shading that we saw on both Wolverine and Jubilee. This figure comes in that oversized VHS box like we saw in those figures, and it has the same fancy box art on it. And I could really care less about that. I don't need any of that fancy packaging and all that stuff. This is also $27. Is it really worth $27? This is the exact same figure that we got in the Wendigo line. The exact same figure. The digital render shows a figure that has slightly different pin joints than from what we see in the Wendigo line, but from what I can see here, this is the exact same figure, it just has a different paint app on it. The one in the Wendigo line is much shinier, a little darker, but the sculpt, the exact same. I actually like the brighter blues that we see on this new figure, but I could really live without that cell shading. I hate it so much. The figure would be better off without it. And if it didn't have the cell shading, I would think about getting this because I like this Mister Sinister figure. Just like I think the Wolverine is actually a pretty decent figure. These all have the bones of some pretty decent figures here, but that cell shading just kills it for me. Very often when I see a figure that has cell shading on it, I'm not sure where the light source is supposed to be coming from, because it feels like the people who make the figures are just slapping on shadow details wherever. And like I said about Wolverine, guys, we really don't need cell shading to detail shadows because we already have lights that we're going to shine on figures, and when you shine a light on a figure to create a shadow in addition to the shadows that already exist from the cell shading, it looks weird to me. It looks weird unless you shine the light just right so that it exists in the same area and shines the same shadow as exists on the cell shading. $27, guys. This is the exact same figure that comes in the Wendigo line, and it does not come with anything new. He doesn't have any new hands, he doesn't have any accessories. This is the exact same figure you saw in the Wendigo line, only now there's no Build-A-Figure part. I don't even want this figure right now, even though I don't have a Hasbro Mister Sinister. I have a Toy Biz Mister Sinister, and I think that one's pretty decent. It has a very different look to it, but I still really like that figure. Would I like to have this figure if he had a normal paint job? Sure. And if he had just those blues and just the reds and none of the nonsense, maybe some washes or something to help line his form a little bit, but those shadows, oh god, it's awful. Just stop, please. I'm begging you, quit ruining these poor figures. The tragic part here is that there's going to be people who want a Mister Sinister because maybe they didn't get the Wendigo Mister Sinister. So re-releasing this figure would be pretty cool. I look at a figure like this and just like Wolverine, I'm seeing a B-tier figure, maybe an A-tier figure that drops down to a D because the cell shading just looks so bad. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. And if you want to hang out with me and my soulmates, I stream live on Twitch Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, as soon as I saw this figure, I turned on X-Men the Animated Series and went looking at some episodes with Mister Sinister in them to see if there were any inaccuracies in the figure compared with the TV show. The most obvious inaccuracy that I saw was the color of Mister Sinister's costume in the cartoon compared to the figure. On the cartoon, the blues on his costume are much darker than they are depicted on the figure. The figure looks so much brighter than the cartoon. It definitely is not the right blue by a long shot. To my surprise, the Wendigo Wave Mister Sinister was more accurate to X-Men the Animated Series than the figure that was supposed to be based on X-Men the Animated Series. Besides that, another inaccuracy that really stood out to me as being very obvious was that on the TV show, most of the time Mister Sinister's cape, the inside of it, is depicted as red, although it does vary from shot to shot. Sometimes you see plain blue, sometimes you see a dark color, but usually when you see a close-up shot of Mister Sinister, you're seeing red, and besides which, The inside of his collar is red, so why wouldn't the inside of his strips that form his cape be red too? It just has a nice continuity to it, and it's strange that it's depicted as an indigo color or even a black color here. I can't tell on the digital render whether the inside of Mr. Sinister's boots is red, but knowing Hasbro, they probably forgot about that too, because that seems like something they would forget about or just completely ignore. Another very obvious flaw that I found on Mr. Sinister was that his cape is actually divided into two sections on the show, with a big split going down the middle of his back. And on the action figure, it's just one big cape formed by strips. But it is very obviously wrong. It should not be like that if it's based on X-Men the Animated Series. It needs to be divided in two. And to compound the problem of Mr. Sinister's capes, there's two layers to his cape. And on the action figure, the top layer appears to be the same length about as the layer beneath it, when on the animated series he still has two layers that are divided into two sections, but the top layer of his cape is shorter than the bottom layer. On Mr. Sinister's boot on X-Men the Animated Series, there is a red band going around his ankle, but on the action figure there is no red band going around the ankle. Yet another inaccuracy. Another difference that I noticed is that on the show, Mr. Sinister's teeth are very sharp, as though they've all been filed to a point, whereas on the action figure, his teeth are ghoulish looking, but they are not filed to a point. They don't look sharp. The figure looks alright, but is it an accurate representation of Mr. Sinister from X-Men the Animated Series? No, it's not. It's just the Wendigo wave Mr. Sinister completely recycled. Well, Soulmates, what do you think of this figure? Do you like him? Do you hate him? Are you on the fence about him? Do you feel like you have to have him, or do you already have a Mr. Sinister that you're happy with? I don't know, guys. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you support what I do, please click subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss a single video of mine when it comes out. And if you want to hang out with me and my soulmates, I stream live on Twitch Monday through Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back again soon with some more thoughts about new comic book toy reveals. And until then, with love from me to you, bye-bye.